Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Podcast by ARMY podcast, where we talk about BTS, ARMY, fandom, and research. We are your co-hosts, Dr. Kate Ringland and
Jhertau Her, university researcher. And today we're going to talk about a couple different things, totally unrelated to each other.
Except not at all, but
Except
go ahead.
not at all. So today is, as we're recording this, it's July 14th in US time. And Kim Seok-jin from the music group BTS, he was the Olympic torchbearer for South Korea in the French Olympics. And for the past several months, there has been calls to boycott the Olympics because of Israel's participation, and been calls for Olympic torchbearers to speak up in protest of Israel's participation. So with that context, we're going to talk about a couple things. Okay, number one, historically, the Olympics have been protested many different times because the Olympics inherently, I will say this, some people are not going to like it, inherently, the Olympics is a problematic event in general. Because number one, it invites a lot of countries that are committing humanitarian crimes to participate. And number two, the Olympics itself is an environmental disaster every single time it's held. Because the Olympics requires large stadiums, it requires a lot of energy, a lot of travel, and just overall environmental impact isn't the best. So if you're an environmentalist at all, most likely you have been involved in boycotting the Olympics in any type of way or protesting them. I remember when the Olympics happened in Brazil, it was a really big issue because there was just too much stuff going on there. But with all that context, Kate and I would like to talk about the Olympics and specifically Jin, what's happening with torchbearers, what's happening with ARMY right now, and this developing situation. There might be more information once this episode is done recording. We'll come back and add more. But for now, let's talk about it. How do you feel, Kate?
How did I feel? To be honest, I didn't really feel a lot of things. So you asked the hard question first.
Yeah, because what Jin did walk, he did hold the torch.
Did.
And he didn't wear anything in protest. He didn't say anything in protest. He just did it.
Yes.
He represented his country.
Yes.
And he did not say anything.
Yeah, and purportedly wearing a Fred whatever jewelry bracelet on top of that. On the timeline, I still have people on my timeline who posted kind of the things you might expect from ARMY in previous times of, oh, I'm so proud of Jin, this is a big deal. There was a lot of the pride happening, and then of course the people being devastated that he didn't say anything, so I saw a lot of that. And then a lot of conversation about ARMY more specifically, but we can talk about that after this. I didn't feel any of those things. Personally, I had very low expectations. I always have hope, always dreaming of a better future. But personally, I assumed he wasn't seeing what we were posting. I assumed he's not being told anything from anyone on his management team about what's going on out in these ARMY spaces. I assume we've been so thoroughly squashed by Weverse that he's probably not seen anything on there. So anyway, I just I had very low expectations of him in general. And so I didn't feel the crushing disappointment that I imagine some people might have felt. But I certainly didn't feel pride either. I was just like, this is a thing that we should be boycotting, and you're here doing it and supporting capitalism while you're at it. So I'm just meh about the whole thing, personally.
Yeah. I personally have some complicated feelings about the Fred bracelet in particular, because it is a bracelet. I believe it's a bracelet that's supporting the Fred Force 10 initiative, which is okay. So that's supposed to support the Special Olympics and support athletes with intellectual disabilities. Which great cause. Wish it wasn't done by Fred. It's like how earlier we saw someone talk about the Olympic torch and how it's
Right.
sustainable.
Yeah.
And how the Olympic torch is rechargeable this year and made out of recycled materials. I was like, that's great. But also, Israel is committing like ecocide in Palestine right now. So Force 10 existing, that's great. But also, LVMH isn't the most inclusive fashion company in the world. Just saying.
Yeah, not loving disabled folks being used as the band-aid here, let's just say.
Yeah. So it's interesting to think of it in the perspective of capitalism, because capitalism does this thing where it tries to make up for how bad it is by using virtue signaling. In queer spaces, we talk a lot about pink washing. So where during Pride Month, companies will just, slap a little rainbow on everything that's been bad.
It's like the puzzle piece. People slapping that puzzle piece on for saving autism.
Yes.
Whatever.
Autism is saved.
I'm so happy for autism being saved.
We're so happy for that. There are no problems anymore. Yeah, but it's very much like it's true performative activism when people do stuff like that. And yeah, I feel the same as you. I think I've reevaluated my relationship with BTS and how I feel about them and just like celebrities in general. Like recently, Rina Sawayama, who's a musician, she's a pop artist musician that I really love. And she actually spoke up about how Matt Healy, who is a musician from this band called in 1975, he also was dating Taylor Swift at one point. She talked about how he owns her masters for her music and how heartbreaking that is and how hard that is. And I supported her for a long time because I really believed in her music and what she was trying to do in the pop music industry. But then she started blocking her fans who were asking her to speak up about Palestine. And that was the last straw for me because I have very strong opinions about musicians, especially when it comes to how they treat their fans. That's why I don't like Doja Cat at all, because of how she treated her fans so poorly when she was going through her own thing, I think a year back. And I think musicians, especially when we think about celebrities, owe a lot to their fans.
Yeah.
And attacking their fans in any type of way, especially when those fans aren't asking for anything huge. Let's just say that. Condemning a genocide, I don't think it's not the most difficult thing in the world to do. It's like saying murder is bad. Yeah. Was that really that hard?
I hope not.
I hope not. Exactly. I stopped listening to her music. I deleted all the MP3 files I have of her music. And I don't talk about her anymore. Especially because I think it's interesting that she acted that way. Especially because she knows her fan base. Majority POC.
Yeah.
Majority, a very activist charged fan base. Because she's very activist charged as well. When she acted like that, I was like, who do you think are going to be your fans after this? Because you're not getting any love from the Taylor Swift crowd at all. Because, let's be real here, a lot of them don't like her because she is a person of color. They're not going to support her the way they support a white celebrity.
Right.
So her doing that, in my opinion, was basically shooting herself in the foot. Because no amount of collaboration, like she just had a collaboration with Paris Hilton. No amount of collaboration, no amount of payola, no amount of anything will make her sustain a fan base because her fans inherently are very activist charged. She built a fan base surrounded around the ideas of activism and feminism and fighting for a cause, fighting for your ideals, talking about a lot of really painful things that have happened to her, talking about her immigrant experiences from her parents. Her work has a lot of political themes. And you want to know who else? Yeah, you want to know who else also has a lot of political themes? Like BTS there's two sides here. BTS have built a fandom of two sides. Of one side that is truly listening to their art and their music and expecting more from them because of their art and music.
And because of their past behavior.
Yes.
Like there's an expectation built because there's a pattern of behavior that they are now deviating from.
Exactly. So there's that one side that has listened to the music, has dissected the lyrics, have created art and inspiration of BTS, and who truly have internalized what BTS have talked about in their music and in their work and art. And then there's another side who just feeds into this capitalist machine.
It's like
around them.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because the other half, the one you were just speaking of, is more like just the K-pop machine, right? It's just K-pop, which is deeply conflicting to me because there's the same folks spent so much time trying to prove they weren't K-pop. And now here they are behaving like it's K-pop.
Yes, K-pop inherently as well does a lot of company worship, which is something reflecting on this. I recently talked about how we need to unionize K-pop. I'm on that train right now. Every time someone talks to me about fandom and we really get into it, I got a whole list of demands and things, right? I'm just like, okay, number one, speak out about Palestine. Number two, this. Number two, three, this, blah, blah, blah. And then in my list now is unionized K-pop, because K-pop artists, we're seeing this right now of how former EXO members are suing SM right now. We're seeing this with how the K-pop group Luna disbanded itself. Melon members got out of the contract because their company was essentially abusing them. There is news that came out about the Luna members, how they were only allowed outside for a small allotted period of time every single day, which by itself, wild.
Yikes.
And in the industry, there's a lot of abuse. And a lot of times people just accept that the abuse is happening and there's no actual effort or mobility to change it, because everyone is now subscribed to this capitalist model of how K-pop is supposed to work. Right. And it's okay, if K-pop is supposed to be the art and the music, you guys wouldn't want this model. We're breaking out of this model.
Right.
And how we break out of this model is by boycotting, by acting, by actually doing something, instead of just continuing to do the model and being a little mad on the side.
Right. That's not how this works. Actually, you actually have to work things in order to change them.
Actually, because we're seeing too how the TXT members got injured pretty badly as they've been on tour because they're, number one, overworked.
There were multiple HYBE group injuries.
Yes.
In the same span of time, which is just really weird. And the fact that I know that means that people were being loud enough about it that it was on my timeline. And I don't know any of these groups.
Because you're someone who's, I think, a good barometer for me of what people actually know what's going on in the community is when I ask you about things.
Because what I'm seeing, it must be pretty loud.
Yeah, because you're someone who's more only in ARMY, and I'm someone who looks at everything. Yeah. A lot of times I'm not that active on Twitter, most likely because I'm dealing with another fandom and whatever they're going through. Right? Because I'm not just a K-pop person. I also like other things. Wild, I know. But it's, I think we need to unionize K-pop. I think we need to dismantle just the K-pop company system. I think inherently, it's like how the K-pop company system is not genuine. It's not artful. It is capitalism on steroids. And I think a lot of the world is seeing that. We saw Simon Cowell, who was trying to make like the next big boy group, right? And there were what, 40 people auditioning for that boy group?
I saw the ads for it and but I didn't. That's really sad.
Yeah. So that's happening. We see how a lot of recently there is a group called Boys World, which is an American, I think either American or British pop group. And they based a lot of kind of their styling and the way they outputted things and did things around K-pop. They disbanded. They didn't earn enough money to keep going. And very much, I think we're seeing the K-pop bubble burst.
Yeah, and I don't think like the Western, it's interesting trying to copy that model in the West, because the Western market has just never operated that way. Culturally, we have not been trained to buy hundreds of the same album over and over. Like, the model doesn't make sense to us. So that's interesting, because like for me, it was really jarring coming into BTS and being like, wait, what do you mean I have to buy the album more than once? It's like that whole model is so very different from at least people I know that have been into music over here. So that's not surprising that trying to copy that and then just hoping it works that's not sustainable.
Yeah, the Western music market does not have the palette for K-pop.
Right.
Or the K-pop model at all, which is why I think a lot of companies choosing to invest so heavily in America for music is foolish.
Yeah.
Because America, there's a very select small group of people who like K-pop in America. And really, all the people who are going to like K-pop, the way that a lot of K-pop stans like K-pop, they're already there.
Right.
There is no way to expand this market. You may get people to casually like the music, but those people are not committed supporters that K-pop needs to survive. Because K-pop groups are so expensive, they cannot operate on just a couple casual listeners. They need dedicated fans. But America, you're not going to get that.
Right.
Which is why investments in Asian countries is way better than investments in the West at all.
Yeah.
That's my marketing opinion on it. I think it's foolish.
I think it's interesting because I think there's probably a ton we could unpack there, and maybe we won't do all that this show, but I do think there's an interesting, like, because there's the racial component, right? There's some racism involved here in terms of trying to even market that kind of stuff to mainstream, like the US, for example, super racist. I don't know if anybody was aware, but the US is super racist. So that's an interesting kind of component that to me, yeah, I agree. I think it's really foolish because I think that the people who are most likely going to buy into that kind of market, like you said, are already doing that. They're just doing it overseas. And so it doesn't make sense to try to replicate that here unless you're doing something to benefit that group of people. And I don't see that happening. I was going to say something else. The other thing I think that from what I have seen and just from people I've talked to and stuff, the reason some folks from the Western market say buy into BTS and decided to go in to this fandom thing with BTS has been around the authenticity and stuff. There's been some stuff that culturally translates well, shall we say, and a lot of that has to do with their authenticity, and they're talking about the human struggle and stuff. And so again, we kind of land back at this, you can't really manufacture that. So anyway, that's just my other thought.
Yeah, because right now as well in the Western music industry, people are craving authenticity.
Yeah.
We saw throughout 2018, 2020, and then into 2022, a lot of industry plants. So we saw Gale with ABCD, ABCDEF, some FU, right? That was the mouthful. And we see things like the Charlie D'Amelio, the D'Amelio family, the TikTok stars. We see Bella Porsche, who is a TikTok star who tried to turn her career into a music career. We're seeing a lot of music that was industry-based, that was plant-based, that people did not like anymore. People were searching for authenticity. That's why we see people like Chappell Roan and Sabrina Carpenter really getting popular, because they're people who have been in the music industry, who truly have a passion for music. Yeah. And that's why they're getting popular, because people are craving authenticity right now.
Yeah.
There's so many people that are getting claimed to be industry plants who aren't even industry plants. And that's because people want an authentic musician. They want authenticity in their celebrities.
Right.
And with that, and knowing that and how the trend is going, we're not going to see K-pop pop off in America. Even if they took people who aren't Asian and did it, like, just remove the racism element real quick. I can say that because I am Asian. Just remove that real quick, right? And just have maybe an all-white group of musicians, group of people, still keep the K-pop model in some way. People aren't gonna like that, because again, people want authenticity in their music right now. So everything that's going on right now it's no good. We gotta move on. We gotta pack it up. K-pop's over. K-pop is over, party. I think BTS truly is like the global group. Yeah. BTS are not going to be affected at all by the K-pop bubble bursting, but every other group will be affected by that.
I think it's interesting too that BTS was talking about this before as they were like prepping for their hiatus and whatever. They were talking about how they had been talking to Coldplay about this and stuff, about how they were rethinking their own model so that they could sustain it over the long run. And I think a lot of that means not doing things in the like traditional K-pop model anymore, meaning not churning out so much music, like doing things more slowly and things like that. And I think that it'll be interesting to see, especially considering how the last couple of years have now gone. Be interesting to see what that looks like. But I think there are a lot of people that have ignored that conversation and have expectations that they're going to come back and they're going to just keep doing what they've been doing. And I think that some people are going to be in for a rude awakening at some point. Around they're in their 30s now. They probably want to like have families, have lives. I don't like, it's interesting to me that people keep pushing for things to be the same when the whole world has changed and people are growing and getting older. And I don't know, I think that it'll be interesting just from a higher level perspective, interesting to see how things unfold. I don't know what that means for the ARMY fandom specifically, considering how things have been going, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we're talking a lot about Palestine right now, right? I think Palestine itself is one rude awakening. But also, when all the members get back, that's going to be a whole other one.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are expecting an album out the gate, music out the gate, concerts out the gate, world tour. But in my opinion, I don't think it's going to happen. Mm-mm. What likely will happen is them recollecting themselves after being away from each other for so long. Most likely having some reevaluations of where they're going to go with their music. Yeah. Maybe an album in 3 years, which is a much more realistic time to make an album.
Yeah. Like, I feel that even now with how my own thoughts and opinions about how Jin basically came out and then hit the ground running with, oh, now he's making an album and now he's doing all these activities and he's recording all this stuff and I'm just like, okay, he can do whatever he wants, but we're all tired. And he must be tired. I think that at some point, I think we all need to take like a collective breath, and I don't know what that looks like. And I have definitely hit my max in terms of like stuff being thrown at me and things coming my way, like day in, day out. And especially in the last couple months with everything that's been going on globally, like outside of the fandom, literally on the ground here and globally, I think that I officially don't really know what all is even going on in terms of BTS releases and what are we expecting? I literally don't know anymore what is even happening and what music is coming out versus video versus there were things that people were like, oh, this is an album, just kidding, it's a photo book. And at that point, I'm just like throwing my hands and being like, I can't, this is not important right now. And it's hard because like I do understand that they put work into these things, but also like I don't know, like the company needs to read the room.
Yeah. The company isn't reading the room, which I think
Ignoring the room.
exactly. I have a whole thing. I could write a dissertation about this, about the company fandom and then central interest relationship. So the central interest is BTS, the company is HYBE, and the fandom is ARMY. And we gotta get rid of the company.
Truly.
Like we have a relationship with the company, but they're not our friend.
No, and it's interesting for me because I was never like anti-company. I'm like, sure, BTS supports HYBE, HYBE supports BTS, that's great. But I have not seen that in the last several months, like the last year, maybe. I have not seen the company actually doing things that would help BTS specifically. It's been more like, how is the company helping the company with BTS's leverage? And seen that in some of the merch that's been going out, and we've seen that in them failing to make public statements about things that they really should have made public statements about, and plus all the like censorship and stuff that's happening on the ground on Weverse. And I just like it all adds up to the company burying stuff that really shouldn't be buried and ignoring stuff that's harming BTS. Like I see BTS being harmed like on the timeline. It's just there. And I think that the company no longer has BTS best interests at heart when it comes to how they're handling things. And if BTS comes back and they clear this up, sure, whatever. But also I'm just so done with things at this point. I don't know. I'm having a really hard time, especially as I'm feeling like, okay, on a personal level, I don't know how much I can even blame Jin for this torchbearer stuff because I don't know what information he's been given. I don't know what the company is telling him about what's going on in these different spaces that probably matter to him. And so unless he's had a moment to sit down and actually look at social media, which given his schedule and stuff, I'm not even sure he's had that moment. For me, I'm just like, I don't like any of this. I don't like not knowing things. I don't like feeling like I'm being manipulated and I'm being used for my money. I'm having feelings.
Yeah, I'm having feelings about it too, because I've had this conversation with a couple people about how HYBE is not a music company. It's not trying to be a music company. It's trying to be a technology company.
Yeah.
Which is why they're pushing things like Weverse so hard. Because music companies themselves aren't super duper profitable. They lose a lot of money investing in their musicians, and even then, musicians themselves are fickle.
Yeah.
And HYBE became a company. Okay, initially, Big Hit did support BTS when it was an independent company. But with HYBE being a company, the priorities of the company are now different. And them trying to be a technology company is super interesting because they're trying to leverage so much of the income and the fan power from ARMY in order to better themselves to be a technology company. But they're so bad at being a technology company, which is, number one, wild to me because they are from South Korea, which is a technology country.
Yeah.
It should not be this hard to find people who are great at technology, great at UX research, great at UI design, just great at technology itself, to work for your company and make great things, but you're failing.
I don't say this lightly, but this is literally my job, is to understand social technology and to understand these platforms. And it's painful to watch how Hive is just screwing this up massively. And the thing is like Weverse, we have been giving them advice and feedback on Weverse for years. I can go back and find threads of mine where I have broken down how Weverse needs to be improved if it's going to be an actual viable platform 3 years ago. And have they done any of the things? No. They've in fact made things worse. And they've resorted to weird pay for play kind of stuff and really capitalismed it to death in a way that is not, it's no longer a useful platform. Look how it's being used right now. It's essentially become like a Zionist haven.
Which is entirely a choice.
Yeah, that is a choice that they have made.
It's a Zionist haven. It's a haven for homophobic armies. Yeah. It's a haven for those WhatsApp group chats that I'm sure there's going to be a lawsuit or something in the future, because they are for sure, there's something sketchy going on there.
Yeah.
And Weverse itself, one problem, right? Another problem, ARMY themselves, right? Let's unpack this. We might as well open this door. We should talk about Sasaengs. Yeah. We should talk about stalkers. We should talk about how interconnected Sasaengs are in the ARMY community. And I'm just gonna say it now that every single big ARMY account, every single one, every single ARMY fan base, every single one, I'm not exaggerating here, is connected with Sasaengs in some type of way. Funding fan bases get a lot of money from solo stands and Sasaeng. Streaming fan bases, they get a lot of support from the solo stand fan bases. Okay? There's a lot of money being exchanged. There's a lot of support and conversations happening, because nothing in ARMY, in any type of power, any type of capacity, is untouched by Sasaengs and solo stands and stalkers.
Yeah.
Okay, those types of things are inherent to the celebrity industry. We saw this with One Direction, if we want to draw direct comparisons. There were solo stands, people didn't use that word, but solo stands for each of the One Direction members. And we still see to this day those people arguing with each other. It's really sad. You can laugh. It's really sad. It's really sad they're still arguing with each other. You'd think that may be beyond that at this point.
Yeah.
But additionally to that, we see stalkers of the One Direction members still hold a lot of power within their communities. People laugh a lot about, oh, the airport cam's getting hacked to look at One Direction and whatever, right? But that's scary, and that's real. And stalkers are within our community, and people just accept that, right? Right now we're talking about how there's this one person in particular who volunteered at the Olympics. And it's okay, if you volunteer at the Olympics, you had to have known Jin was going to be a torchbearer way before that was even announced. Because in order to volunteer for Olympics, you have to sign up way in advance. We need to talk about that, and we need to make that very clear, because I think when we don't make that very clear, people have an issue with viewing power on ARMY Twitter and in ARMY itself as a fandom and a community, because people think power has to be centralized in these big accounts and has to come from these big accounts. When it's like, do you even want the power from those accounts? Do you even want the eyes from those accounts? Because the eyes and the people that are behind those, I don't think you want to associate with them. Yeah. We need to break down these power structures and have our own power as people. Because why do we care about those people anymore?
It was interesting. So the day that Jin came out of the military, and my timeline was just full of unofficial video and pictures. And I spent like a good solid chunk of my evening just unfollowing and blocking people, and like soft blocking and doing different things to get rid of all that unofficial content from my timeline, because it's one of those things where I'm like, you shouldn't be there. Why are we sharing this information, right? There's an interesting kind of push and pull on ARMY Twitter, where we have these really big accounts who will kind of decide the norms for the rest of us. And we don't have to give them that power just because they have tens of thousands of followers. We don't have to listen to what they say. And I think that a lot of us, especially as we became louder and more proactive about our pro-Palestinian activism stuff on ARMY Twitter, and then we had the mass rift between us and people who decided not to choose the path of good. There was a big kind of decision for each of us that got made around, we come out about this, and of course we're going to get canceled by the other side. I think that there's an interesting choice being made there, where I feel, for me, part of that was like reclaiming my own power. I don't need those voices in my life, and I don't need to be reflecting those voices or reflecting my support of those voices to other people in my space. Like, I don't need that anymore. And I think that one of the things we've been struggling with, like this last week is a really good example of it. We've been really struggling with kind of divorcing ourselves completely from those kind of big toxic accounts. And because we still see a lot of screenshots, we still have people quote retweeting. And I think at some point we need to just like them out and just not give them that power anymore. Yeah, people are screenshotting my stuff and putting me on blast on some part of Twitter. And I'm sure people about me. And I'm not saying that just to sound paranoid. I like literally know that people are out there talking about me. And I am choosing to ignore it, because what do I care what those people think? Those people are choosing the side of genocide. So they've made their choice, and they are no longer important to me, and they are no longer of value to me in any way. And the fact that I'm still here and I'm still talking about and to BTS about this means that they have not lost me yet, that their voice is still important to me. So I hope they use it. And that's the difference there between why I'm still active here in this space and trying to exert my own power from my own position versus giving in and continuing to be in argument with people who don't matter anymore.
Yeah, I've been saying this a lot, but we need to be disciplined in our activism.
Yeah.
Seeing what's happened at the university encampments at many universities across the world, and how young activists are being extremely disciplined now, way more than in previous movements, where if there's a news person who comes up to them, if there's an agitator who comes up, they don't engage. And that takes a lot of discipline, because a lot of people want to engage, they want to fight, but you don't need to. Because is that helping the cause? You fighting that person, you engaging with them? No. It's not going to save the people with you engaging with them. There's some people you do have to engage with, but that's why it's called being disciplined. Because the people you do engage with, that's so that way you can get leverage and you can spread your campaign further and your advocacy further. We saw what happened with Z Squirrel, right? So Z Squirrel, ZEI_squirrel on Twitter, they are one of the main people exposing the New York Times lies about mass rape in Palestine, mass rape of prisoners, of Israeli prisoners, right? They're one of the main people exposing all of the lies and the hoaxes created by the New York Times. What ARMY did was ARMY campaigned to reply and to at them in order for them to start talking about Scooter Braun, and the way Scooter Braun is creating like these documentaries of lies about Hamas and they're so dangerous and what they're doing, and we gotta fight them and we gotta bomb the entirety of Palestine to do it, right?
Right.
And Z Squirrel ended up making a whole thread about that, about Scooter Braun and everything that he's doing and how he's using the music industry to spread Zionism. And that type of stuff is extremely worthwhile because, number one, that puts our movement to different eyes. And number two, that's getting more people to get on board with our movement who may have not understood it fully before. Because a lot of people did describe Scooter Braun as just a random white guy, right?
Right.
But he's not. He's a propagandist. Right. And we should say that.
Yeah.
We should use the correct vocabulary to describe him. Because that empowers us to know what he's actually doing, to recognize that. We need to be disciplined in our activism. We can't go arguing with these people anymore. There's a lot of things I could say, especially as someone who's a former funder ARMY. There's a lot I could say about the former funding fan base I was in, about the former funding spaces that I was in, of how they chose to kick me out, and how there are people who chose to not speak up with me at that time. I could expose all of that. And we could spend our time doing that. We could go write up op-eds and everything. But will that help the movement? Will that support Palestinians and what they're doing? No, it would distract from that. So I'm not going to say anything. Because right now, Kate talked about this too. Right now, what's most important is Palestine.
Yeah.
And stopping the genocide. And speaking up against Zionism. That is what's most important. So how do we keep that our North Star? How do we stay focused on that? Right? Because I talked about this before with a couple of friends, but back in February at UC Santa Cruz, we have this amazing event called the Practical Activism Conference. And it's literally an event where they invite an activist speaker to come speak. But then they also have a lot of local university and also local Santa Cruz movements and groups come to speak and to engage with students in order to talk about activism and doing the work, right? And the main speaker, her name is Mariah Parker. She's part of the Stop Cop City movement in Atlanta. And she talked about this concept of a North Star, right? And a North Star is basically your guiding point in activism, right? So a lot of times in activism, you will want something, right? So let's talk about dismantling police forces, stopping policing, just point blank, right? If you want to stop policing, that's a far away goal, but that's your North Star. And as you're working towards that North Star, you're going to have to do things along the way. Stopping Cop City is one thing. And in Stopping Cop City, she talked about how she had to work with people who were in total agreement of stopping policing, but they did want to stop Cop City. So she did have to meet those people where they were and work with them on this one thing. So that's what we're seeing in ARMY right now. Our North Star is the liberation of Palestine. Along the way, we got to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that, Kate?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that we've been, as a community, we have grown a culture of social justice and doing the activist work and being true to ourselves and our values. And so to me, having this North Star of the liberation of Palestine makes sense. And I think the struggle has truly been realizing, not necessarily realizing how far away the end goal feels, because I think we all, at least hopefully most of us, were realistic in this being a marathon and not a sprint. But I think for a lot of us, the surprise came from how much resistance from within our community there would be. And I think that has been the hardest thing in terms of us trying not to get derailed, because it's one thing to fight outside source forces and it's one thing to get our voice heard beyond our own fandom, but it's a whole other thing to be fighting internally with our fandom and figuring out who our community really is. And so it's been a challenge to not get distracted, and I have also fallen victim to this. But anyway, so I agree that yes, I think that kind of And so we see this on the timeline and stuff, people reminding, okay, let's remember to center Palestine and things like that. And I think just having that kind of helpful, supportive reminder when we do get off track because we have so much internal strife, that it's hard when you have people who purportedly at one point in time had the same values as you out there just outright lying and or changing the narrative and gaslighting and doing all the things they've been doing. And it's hard trying to exist in that space with them. And so I am an advocate for cutting them out of our space and just not letting them have air here.
And I think at this point, that is the right thing to do, because clearly we're not naming it enough. These people are not anti-boycotters. They are Zionists.
Yeah.
A lot of people are waiting for these people to say it outright. They don't need to say it outright. They are. If behavior is anything, they are. So we need to recognize that, and we need to give it up. Because a lot of these people, they're not just Zionists, they're also homophobic, transphobic, ableist. They're not our friends. And
yeah. Have we mentioned racist?
Racist?
Ooh,
oh my God. We could break it down. But these people, a lot of these people who are Zionists and are revealing themselves now, they have been problems in our community for a long time.
Yeah.
There's one person in particular that people are less like, we need to get rid of them. They're a Zionist. They're doing this and that. And I'm just like, they've been a problem for years.
Yeah. We have been giving them power and a platform for years. Years.
Exactly. So things aren't going to change overnight because they've built a platform of people that will support them no matter what. Because they're not a good person. So why do we want to hang out with them? We don't. Goodbye.
Yeah.
You're not my friend. Yeah.
And I truly think we should treat them just like we would treat any other rando, racist, homophobic, whatever it is. We should just treat them like we would treat any other person off the street or Twitter or whatever, and just block them and move on, because they clearly don't have our best interests. They clearly don't have humanity's best interests, and just move on, because they're sucking up our energy and we are giving them power and they don't deserve it.
They don't. And also, very much, I talked about this too, about inviting them into our space. Okay? Palestinians are already exhausted. They're tired. Okay? They're tired of having to teach people all the time. They're tired of having to be the forefront of this movement. So you inviting Zionists into our space in any capacity, and then continuing to tire out Palestinians and pro-Palestinian people who are trying to fight against those people and get them out of our space, is counterintuitive to the movement. Be more disciplined in your activism, okay? Don't go looking for fights where there wasn't already a fight, because you don't need that fight, right? This happens a lot in real life advocacy too. This is real life advocacy, physical world advocacy.
Yeah.
Where sometimes you're working towards a goal, you don't like someone in your space. They might agree on the basis of ideas, or they might completely disagree, but they're still there. Do you go and you go look for a fight with them? No. Why are you doing that? In a town hall meeting? The tea. Anyway, but you have to be disciplined. You have to refrain and show restraint. And a lot of times people talk about, okay, this is true, this is real, that a lot of times people of color are silenced and their anger is dismissed. And that's true, that happens. But a lot of times you go into these spaces, you gotta work under the circumstances that are happening, right? I don't like having to play niceties when I go places, okay? I just want to be angry and mad at everyone. But I play it so that way I can get what I want. Sometimes you have to ignore the annoying person or be a little nice to the person you don't like because you're trying to go for a greater goal.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to people who have made it their platform to be loud and ignorant in online spaces, it's very easy to just block them. And if they are harassing you, that's a whole different issue. That's a whole nother episode.
If they're harassing you, you can sue them in a court of law. Go ahead, do it. More people should, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that the majority of us who are existing here as allies and supporters of this cause, we should be doing that instead of giving more platform to people who don't deserve it.
Yeah, and make your own platforms. Speak and use your voice. Yeah. I talk about this with people all the time, especially with grassroots advocacy movements, because I am a grassroots advocate. Yeah, let's go. But sometimes you won't win it all. Kate talked to us earlier. It's a marathon, not a sprint, which is unfortunate because I want it to be a sprint really badly.
Yeah, well, sure we all do, but that is not how life works. And we're talking about dismantling whole systems of injustice. It's going to take time and a lot of work and labor and some tears. And here we are.
That's okay, though.
Yeah.
It's actually, I think, with what has happened over the past, let's say, over the past just 9 months, okay? With how many people have talked about Palestine and what's happening. There has been more movement in these 9 months than the past 20 years for the movement. So right now we are sprinting in advocate terms. So we're sprinting, but a lot of people don't see that because a lot of times, okay, number one, if you are an advocate, if you do advocacy work, you should read about other movements. Yeah. I am someone who has studied the civil rights movement a lot. And that is where a lot of my beliefs as an advocate comes from, a lot of my basis and understanding of advocacy, because the civil rights movement to me is really important. There's also things like the gay liberation movement that was happening at the same time and how people rallied around things like AIDS. You need to study these things in order to have perspective on your current advocacy and your current movements. Because what Army for Palestine is doing is a sprint in advocacy terms. Yeah. They've gone from 0 followers to how many? How many? They've gone from 0 to 37.6 thousand. There is movement happening, and we need perspective on that in order to retain hope, in order to keep hope, right? I was feeling a little down the other week when Jin was first announced as Olympic torchbearer, and I was like, he doesn't speak up at all. I think I'm done. But then I was like, oh, actually, because when you have people in movements who end up being exposed as a bad person or being exposed as someone who's silent or for the oppressor in any type of way, a lot of times you might feel disappointed. You might feel a little disrupted from that. But it doesn't change the movement. That just means we need to keep working until there's a point where they do speak up. Because people keep thinking they'll never speak up. People are being defeatist right now. No, we're not. We're not doing that, okay? Because BTS will speak up. I will create a world where they will speak up. That is how I'm feeling about this. Because I'm creating a world where everyone will speak up. And that everyone includes BTS.
Yeah.
So that's the mentality and mindset I go into when it comes to advocacy work. Because it's important to retain hope. We talked about this in one of our previous episodes. We need to be able to imagine a better future and then actualize that future. Because if we don't do those things, we're not going to have the future we want.
Exactly.
Keep moving forward. Keep doing great things. I think we're coming up to an hour now. Do you want to do some final thoughts, Kate?
Yeah, final thoughts. I know we're tired. And I know that you all have feelings, positive and negative. And it's okay to feel those feelings. But I think that it's important to remember who we're fighting for and who we're speaking up for, and to make sure that we're giving the right platforms and the right ideas and the right values airtime, especially in public, and that it's important to as BTS said, speak yourself, to make sure that you are taking your own power and not ceding it to people who don't deserve to have your time or resources or energy or anything else. And take a breath and just keep putting one foot in front of the other, because we're not going to see a better future unless we keep walking towards it. And that means us all walking together collectively and continuing to be loud and continuing to stand up for what we believe in. And there are going to be people we lose along the way because they don't have enough conviction or they don't share our values, and that's fine. We just keep going without them. And yeah, don't give up. And I feel like Palestinians have been fighting for this for 75 plus years. And some of us have been in this for significantly less time. And I think that we should remember that, and we should continue to uphold their voices and make sure that we're doing everything we can to be a powerful platform for them.
And we can do it.
Yeah.
Again, it's all perspective. Study your past advocates, your past activists. Study all of those people. Study the history of movements. You'll know that right now we're in the thick of it, but once we come out of it, we're going to be so much better. Right? Think of things like gay liberation. We'll go back and talk about that. Getting the right to marry in America was a long fought battle of many different court cases. Number one, they had to decriminalize just having gay sex in your own private home. That was a whole fight. And eventually that got decriminalized. And then it was like, okay, how do we decriminalize just being gay in public? Just existence of gay people. They had to get that decriminalized. And then the fight for gay marriage was a whole thing where they had to fight against people who were saying it was comparative to bestiality or letting people marry their pets or animals. It was a fight, but in the end, they did win the right for gay marriage. Right now, that right is being threatened and attacked, but we did win it. And we're going to continue fighting for it and continue winning for it. And with Palestine, we are winning a lot right now. We just saw recently how there's been thousands of companies who have pulled out of Israel.
Some like 40 plus thousand. What?
Yeah. Because that's how we do it. That's how we shake things up. If you had told a pro-Palestinian activist 2 years ago that all this would be happening, they wouldn't be able to believe you. So right now we are sprinting in this marathon, and we're gonna be okay. We're gonna make it through, and we're gonna liberate. We will liberate, and it's not just Palestine; it's everywhere else in the world, everywhere else that we're talking about. What's happening in Sudan right now? What's happening in the Congo right now? There's so much work to be done, but we can do it. Yay!
We got this. Keep going.
But yeah, that's all I got for today. I hope you all have a wonderful day. You take care of yourselves. You get some rest. You can lay on the floor as you email your representatives. Honestly, do what you need to do. But yeah, take care of yourselves. Do great things and continue to fight for liberation. Bye.
Bye.